member-supported public television.
Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Alexander Johnson. WLIW 21 and Newsday are pleased to present the debate for New York's 1st Congressional District. I'm joined by Newsday reporter Michael Rothfeld, who will be doing the questioning. Let's meet the two major party candidates, Democratic incumbent Timothy Bishop and Republican challenger Bill Manger. The rules for tonight are as follows. Each candidate will have a maximum of 90 seconds to respond to our reporters' questions. At the end of the debate, candidates will be allowed 90 seconds each for closing comments. The order was determined by a coin toss. We'll begin with Congressman Bishop. Sir?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Congressman Bishop and Mr. Manger, both of you, for coming today.
Our pleasure.
Congressman Bishop, the first question regards Iraq. You said at the beginning of your term that you would have voted to support the invasion of Iraq. Given the absence of weapons of mass destruction, the increase in casualties and cost, would you today vote for the invasion of Iraq?
No, I would not. I said what I said back in October of '02 because I believed the president when he said that we were in imminent danger, and I also believed the president when he said that he would use war as only as a last resort. We now know that there were no weapons of mass destruction, no ties to Al-Qaeda, no active nuclear program, so we now know that we had time to build an international coalition. We had time to continue to work on containing Saddam Hussein through diplomatic means, and we now know that the president did not use diplomacy as extensively as he could have, and that war was more than a last resort.
Mr. Manger, would you vote today to support the invasion of Iraq?
I would. At the time, we were presented with evidence that most of the world agreed was clear, that there were a growing threat in Iraq. There was weapons of mass destruction. We had seen by his past performance, in fact, by his own gassing of his own people, the Kurds in the north, by his invasion of an innocent neighboring country to the south, clearly Saddam Hussein was not a good person. And we did have to go in there and take decisive action. It was a growing threat. Everyone saw that. And we did the right thing by going in there because we are now being able to transform that country. And at this point, I don't think anyone believes that the world is better off without Saddam Hussein in jail. Having Saddam Hussein in jail is far preferable than having him in charge of the country of Iraq. It was a terrible dictatorship, mass murders, rape rooms, all sorts of things like that. The country is better off, and we are doing everything we can to restore a democracy, as well as providing a beacon of hope in the center of the Middle East, which in the long run will transform that region of the world that has been troubled for so many years.
Next question, please.
Mr. Manger, a commercial run by congressional Republicans on your behalf suggests that Congressman Bishop would support cutting Social Security benefits and raising eligibility rates when he's never espoused those positions. Will you take responsibility for the ad run on your behalf, and do you agree with it or do you reject it?
Well, look, you know, again, the National Republican Congressional Committee runs ads that have no coordination with me or my campaign. What that ad was pointing out was just a statement that my opponent had made at our first debate at the Smithtown Library, where he said basically all options are on the table. Now, if you say all options are on the table, what does that mean? Does that mean raising the payroll taxes, cutting benefits, raising the retirement age? I mean, this is the question. It was his quote that was used at the Smithtown Library, and that's what it was.
It doesn't bother you that he's never espoused the positions that the ad suggests he did?
Well, he just said all options are on the table. Again, you have to see what are the options for changing Social Security or beefing it up. Those are clearly some options. If all options are on the table, then those options must be on the table.
Mr. Bishop, do you care to respond to that?
Yeah, I don't think the NRCC is interested in running ads unless they include significant distortions, and this is an example of that. I said something that I consider to be very sane and very responsible. We have a problem that we need to fix, and I believe the way problems are solved is by setting out options, assessing those options, making judgments about what option provides the greatest benefit at the least cost, and then make a judgment. That's the way decisions ought to be made. Unfortunately, the ideologues that are now making decisions for us in Washington don't follow that kind of practical process. So I believe that I'm being criticized for something that just constitutes sound decision-making.
Okay. The next question is for you, Congressman Bishop. Could you please explain the controversy over your acceptance of college tuition for your daughter from a wealthy friend, and does it worry you that voters might think it compromises you as an elected official?
I'll take the first part first. I have a very wealthy friend, a very generous friend, who gave to my daughter and 10 other children the gift of paying for their college tuition. I went to the House Ethics Committee. I asked for a ruling on whether or not I could continue to receive this gift. The House Ethics Committee gave me back a 5-page statement indicating that it was permissible for me to continue to receive the gift because I clearly had a long-standing relationship with this individual. With respect to whether or not my voting record is compromised, I would invite people to simply look at my voting record. They will not be able to find a single vote on which my judgment was compromised in this regard, and in fact, one would find several votes where I voted in a way that arguably is antithetical to the financial interests of the gentleman who has been so generous to my daughters.
Okay.
Respond to that question at all?
Yeah, I would just say that, you know, this issue was brought out in an article in Newsday back in June when it was released that the congressman had accepted this gift while he was a sitting congressman. I think it just draws a question as to why a sitting congressman would still accept this gift. I believe people in public service should be held to a higher standard. Gary Ruskin of the Congressional Accountability Group, a nonpartisan organization, also said this was wrong, and I just think that it would be improper for a sitting congressman to still accept gifts from political contributors. That's just my position.
Mr. Menger, your family's listed on the social register, so is your campaign managers. You're wealthy enough to be able to afford not to work for over a year in order to campaign for this office. Why should, you know, an average voter, a roofer in Center Reach, for example, think that you would represent his interests and could relate to his problems?
You know, the most important thing is not where you come from, it's what you do with your life. For the past 6 years, I have dedicated my life to public service. 4 years representing the Village of Southampton on the village board, and then 2 years at the United States Department of Transportation in Washington, where I was a senior policy in the Maritime Administration. I believe in public service. I would like to see more people give back to their communities in public service. I think it's an honorable, it's a noble cause and a profession, and I think serving the people is one of the highest callings we can have. My family has had a long influence in public service. My grandmother, for 25 years, was the representative from the Red Cross to the United Nations. My father, a medical doctor, used to give 1 day a week of his time to work in a clinic for free to see patients. I have been brought up in a family where public service was always highly valued, and I think it's very important to give back to the community in which you live. I have crisscrossed this district. I've spoken to thousands upon thousands of people, and I understand their views on the issues. And I want to go and fight for them in Washington.
Congressman Bishop, any response to his comment?
I would simply say that I've lived in this district my entire life, raised my family here, worked here, and I grew up in a blue-collar family, union household, and I believe that I have a intimate awareness of the everyday problems that working families encounter. And in fact, one of the issues that propelled me to run for Congress 2 years ago was my belief that we were not paying sufficient attention to working class families and the working poor, and that our policies were skewed to benefit those at the upper ends of the economic spectrum as opposed to those in the middle and the lower ends. And as I say, this is a part of our society that I have great familiarity with. I've had to work very hard for everything I have in life, and I believe that that kind of background enables me to connect with the people of the 1st District in ways that I find very helpful in terms of the decisions I need to make.
What about his background? As the Suffolk Democratic chairman has, I think, said he's a wealthy dilettante, to paraphrase.
I'm not going to characterize him in that fashion. He is who he is. He comes from where he comes from, and he's setting himself out for public office. I'm not going to characterize him.
Just to follow up on that point, it's not clear why you want the job. This is to you, Mr. Mayor. Why do you want this job?
I want the job because I saw in 2002 that this district had a void in leadership. With the change in the election, all of a sudden we're being represented by a freshman in the minority party who has himself said that the partisan rancor in Washington, not something that I'm in favor of, but something that clearly exists and is a reality, is hindering his effectiveness in Washington and his effectiveness to get legislation to the floor. 13 bills have been proposed by him, sponsored by him. 10 of them are in limbo land and are going nowhere. Clearly, we would be better served by a member of the majority party that could work with the leadership to get bills on the agenda, because again, it's the leadership that determines which bills come to the floor. And by doing that, I would be an accurate and effective leader for the people of Eastern Suffolk County.
Would that mean
and I
you
want to
would,
make sure that we get our fair share of the tax dollars back in this district, because clearly we are sending more money to Washington than we are getting back. Senator Moynihan used to point out that for every dollar that is sent to Washington, only 80 cents comes back to New Yorkers. The majority of that also goes to New York City.
So would you then kowtow to the conservative leadership of the House then?
Absolutely not. I am an independent Republican, and I am voting with the constituents who live and work here in this district. There are several areas where my policy is different. My job, when I go to Washington, is to accurately and effectively represent those here in this district. I am not going to Washington to represent a party label. I'm not going to Washington to represent an administration. I'm going to Washington to represent the 650,000 people that live here.
Please go ahead.
I'd like to say a couple things. Number one, my opponent said that there was a void in leadership after 2002 when I was elected. I take exception to that. I believe that I've been a very effective member of Congress. I brought back over $65 million in federal appropriations to this district. I've assisted well over 1,000 constituents in terms of their needs, individual needs with the federal government. I've been very protective and supportive of Brookhaven Lab, Plum Island Animal Disease Lab. So I believe that my record is one that I'm enormously proud of and happy to run on. With respect to the issue, pardon me, of how many bills I've submitted or passed, I have the 11th best record at the freshman class out of 58 freshmen. And I'll just point out one of my colleagues from Colorado, Republican of Colorado, Marilyn Musgrave, widely acknowledged to be a rising star in the Republican Party. She submitted 13 bills, same number as I did. She's passed none of them. I passed 3. So I believe that I'm an effective member of Congress. I also believe that the simple number, how many bills you submit, how many bills you pass, is not an accurate measure of how effective a member of Congress is. But if that's the measure that my opponent wants to use, I'm doing an awful lot better than several of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle.
May I add one thing?
I think we need to move on to the next question. Congressman Bishop, your literature claims that you secured $45 million in transit projects for your district that were not approved by the Senate. Did you purposely mislead your constituents?
No, first off, that's not correct to say they haven't been approved by the Senate. The Senate passed a transportation bill that did not include any projects. What has not been approved is the conference report that results from the Senate and the House getting together. And no, I have not misled my constituents. The $45 million of projects are in that. They are all in the transportation bill. They will all stay in the transportation bill. And once we can get the 3 leaders, the Republican leadership in the House, the Republican leadership in the Senate, and the Republican in the White House to agree, we'll have a transportation bill. If those 3 entities could agree, that money would be here right now, and we would be putting people to work, and we would be making infrastructure improvements in this district that are badly needed.
Mr. Manker, would you like to respond?
Well, this is the problem. You know, my opponent has said that this money has been delivered to the district. It has not been delivered to the district. When asked this question, he said, you're right, it hasn't come to the district, and we don't know when it will get here, because it has not gotten through the other house in the Congress and has not been signed into law by the President. So it's wrong to say that the money is here in the district and it's been secured when it is not.
May I?
Please.
I have done what I can do. I have gotten that money in the House Transportation Bill, and that money will stay in the House Transportation Bill because every one of the 435 members of the House has money in that Transportation Bill, and those projects are going to stay there. Again, I will say, if we could get the leadership, all of the same party, to agree on this bill, which is a jobs creation bill, that money would be here, and it will be here, I would suspect, no later than January or February.
Mr. Manger, what is your position on gay marriage?
I believe marriage is between a man and a woman, and that is my position. When it comes to the amendment that was passed in the House recently, I would have voted no for that amendment.
The constitutional ban on gay marriage?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Congressman Bishop, what's your position?
I voted no on the ban on same-sex marriage for lots of reasons, but I also do believe that that in our society we ought to be sufficiently loving and tolerant to find ways of recognizing the commitment that two people make to one another. So whether we allow civil unions or something like that, I think that that's a step that we ought to be taking as a society.
Are you for or against gay marriage?
I think the title that we give to it is less important than the recognition of the commitment that people make to one another. And I think all of the privileges, if you will, that are attached to the status of marriage ought to be attached in some legal way to same-sex couples.
Are you in favor of the same exact institution for gay couples as heterosexual couples now can have?
Not at the present time, no.
Okay, thank you. The next question is for Congressman Bishop. There's been speculation that Southampton College's campus could become or house a Native American casino. How would you react to that possibility, and should you have accepted $6,600 from five tribes while such an idea is floating around?
I would not support the presence of a casino on the Southampton College campus. I have made it very clear from the very first that I am opposed to casino gaming on the east end of Long Island on either fork. I've made that position very clear from the very first. I've been consistent on that, and I don't intend to change my position. So if there is a move, and by the way, there is no move to put a casino on the Southampton College campus, but if there was one, I would resist it with every ounce of authority and influence that my office might have. With respect to campaign contributions, I have a very clear conscience with respect to how I vote. I vote and behave in ways that I consider to be in the best interests of my constituency, I think my record on that is very, very clear.
Okay, Mr. Menger, any response?
Yeah, I would say I am also opposed to having a gaming facility on the South Fork, on the east end of Long Island, for several reasons. Certainly environmental reasons is one of the first and primary reasons. The traffic congestion issue, because of the infrastructure we have, it is virtually impossible to expand to the capacity that would be necessary to accommodate such a huge influx of people coming to a gaming facility at that location. You know, the infrastructure, the lay of the land, it's just an impossibility. So I am opposed to having gaming on the east end of Long Island. At the same time, I do think it's troubling that my opponent would accept money from tribes that have gaming facilities. Clearly that says that he is in favor of gambling at Indian Native American facilities and lands.
Yeah. I think that's a conclusion that one ought not to draw. Tribes have interests and issues that go far beyond gaming, and I am very interested in protecting the rights of Native people. But to draw the inference that simply because I accept funds from Indian nations that I am supportive of gaming is simply not supported by the facts.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Menger, why do your ads state that Southampton College has gone bankrupt and that it has cost 200 jobs when in fact that is not exactly true?
Look, the fact of the matter is, at the first debate that I had with my opponent in Smith County, he said, for 16 years I was the CEO of Southampton College. That is the chief executive officer, the highest person in the hierarchy at Southampton College. The problem is that during his tenure, and this is relevant to his tenure now in the House of Representatives because it shows a fiscal irresponsibility. The deficit spiraled up to $55 million by the time he left. And now in Washington, we see the National Taxpayers Union has pointed out that in his first year alone, he put his name and sponsored bills that would have increased spending by $226 billion. This is, you know, unbelievable. So the problem is that the college in June announced that it was closing its doors. It is relocating its undergraduate program outside of the Township of Southampton, which relies on those jobs and that facility in the Township of Southampton, moving it outside of Suffolk County and moving it outside of the 1st Congressional District. It is a loss to the Township of Southampton to have those people go. And as my opponent said in Suffolk Life, shortly after LIU announced what would be happening to Southampton College, he said, Southampton College is a large cultural center for the East End, and to see all of the energy of the students and faculty of the college go away will have a major impact. That is what we were talking about.
I think the question was about the truthfulness of your ad, though. Was that a distortion of...
The facts are clear. The college is closing its undergraduate program at Southampton. There will no longer be that students and those faculty and the ancillary employees to support that institution there. And that is the problem.
Mr. Bishop, do you think you should be held responsible for the financial state of this college?
I believe that every senior officer of Southampton College that ever worked there from the moment it opened till now, I believe that every senior officer of Long Island University that was ever a part of the decision-making process of Long Island University, and every single person who's a member of the board of LIU shares in the responsibility for what happened to Southampton College, and I accept my part of that. Southampton College was a troubled institution from the moment it opened. I started working there in 1973, and the very first week I was there was a discussion about whether or not the college was going to close or not. I believe I kept the college open all of these years as a result of my ability to lead.
Okay, we have time for one.
Well, we've covered so much time and so many questions. This will be our final question to both of you gentlemen.
Okay, and if you could...
I wouldn't mind an opportunity to clarify something.
Unfortunately, we don't have sufficient time.
Yes, I would just like you to give me perhaps a one-word answer on this. The minimum wage, which has been $5.15 for the last 7 years, would, for a 40-hour work week, net $123 after taxes. Do you each support an increase in that?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, absolutely. And it is criminal that the Congress of the United States refuses to allow minimum wage legislation to even come to the floor for consideration.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That was our final question.
Okay. The candidates will now begin, deliver their closing comments. We're going to begin with Mr. Manger. Sir, you have 90 seconds.
Well, thank you so much. You know, from Montauk to Fort Salonga, from Blue Point to Orient and Fisher's Island beyond, I have crisscrossed this entire district. I have spoken to thousands upon thousands of the residents of this district, and I have asked them, what are those things that most concern you? What would you like to see addressed during this campaign? Time and time again, the two themes that come up are economic security and homeland security. Clearly, with economic security, taxes is one of the #1 issues that I have heard out there when I've been speaking to all of you that live in the 1st Congressional District. I am in favor of lowering taxes, and I am in favor of less regulation so that our local businesses can thrive. They are the engine of opportunity here on Eastern Long Island. We must do everything we can to help them. That is why I have been endorsed by the United States Chamber of Commerce, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, because I believe you, the taxpayers, know best how to spend your hard-earned dollars rather than bureaucrats in Washington. And I also want to make sure that Homeland Security is first and foremost when I get down to Washington in January of next year, because I want to make sure that every family is safe and secure when they go to bed at night. And that is why I've been endorsed by Rudy Giuliani, Senator John McCain, and every major law enforcement agency in Suffolk County. So I'm asking for your support. I'm asking for your vote on November 2nd. I thank you very much for listening tonight, and God bless you, and God bless America.
Okay, Congressman Bishop, you have 90 seconds, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having this debate. I have developed a record that I'm very proud of in my first 2 years in the Congress. I have brought back a significant amount of money to the district in federal earmarks. I have developed an absolutely first-rate constituent service program that has assisted well over 1,000 constituents. And I've worked very closely with elected officials of both parties to address the needs of this district. It is this record that has earned for me the endorsement of Newsday, something that I'm very proud of, the endorsement of approximately 60 to 70 other groups, including practically every union on Long Island, including the Fraternal Order of Police, every environmental group, every choice group. And so I believe that my candidacy and my service have been well received by the constituents that I've served. I have considered this to be the greatest honor of my life. It's an honor that I work very hard every day to demonstrate to the people of this district that the faith that they have placed in me was a good decision, and I pledge to them that I will continue to work every bit as hard if they continue to place their faith in me, and I ask for their vote on November 2nd.
Great. Well, gentlemen, thank you both very much for being here.
Thank you very much.
That's the end of our debate for the 1st Congressional District of New York. I'd like to thank Congressman Timothy Bishop and Bill Manger for being with us. And for everyone here at WLIW and Newsday, thank you at home for watching. I'm Alexander Johnson. Have a good evening.